Hells Angels MC. If you see a bunch of bikers wearing leather vests with a skull and wings, you are not looking at a club for Sunday brunch. The guys wearing it are members of Hells Angels. This symbol is more than just a design, but also has a history as deep as the gang's engine roars. The skull with wings is not just a spooky skeleton trying to fly away. It stands for power, freedom, and a little bit of danger. It's also connected to the fact that the Hells Angels started in 1948 in California, and how some of the first members were military pilots. This might explain why the skull grew wings, like it was late for a flight. It looks tough because the club is tough. These are the type of guys who ride together and do not take kindly to random strangers poking around. Messing with them is like poking a bear on a motorcycle because it's a bad idea. Meanwhile, the logo's colors are red and white. They call this combo red and white, or HAMC for short. Sometimes the logo has the number 81, that is biker code for Hells Angels. H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, A is the first. Put them together and boom, you get 81. It is a secret handshake, but with numbers. They put it on hats and shirts so they can spot each other without making it too obvious. It's like a club password, but you wear it instead of whispering it through a door. Interestingly, the logo is trademarked, which means even big companies like Harley-Davidson and Disney have been told to back off. If a billion-dollar company cannot use it without permission, your neighbor's homemade biker jacket definitely will not pass the test. Mara 18. Not all gangs hate school because some of them actually love numbers. Mara 18 is a good example. This gang loves math so much that their name and symbols all have the number 18 in them. If math tests involved gang signs, these guys would pass with flying colors. This gang may be infamous today, but these guys all started as rejects in the 1960s. Some Mexican immigrants in Los Angeles felt left out when they weren't allowed in the bigger Mexican-American gangs, so instead of crying at home because they didn't have friends, they made their own club. As the gang grew, its symbol started becoming one of the most infamous logos on the streets. They write it in all sorts of ways, including XVIII, X8, or 18. The scariest way they write it is 666, which doesn't mean they're devil worshippers. Instead, it's just basic addition, because 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. They also use hand signs, twisting their fingers into shapes that spell out 18. If you ever see someone bending their fingers into an attempt at shadow puppets, they might not be preparing for a magic show, they could be throwing a gang sign. Mara 18 members also love their tattoos. They tattoo 18 on their arms, hands, faces, necks, or anywhere there's skin. Some go all in and cover their whole face. If your tattoo artist ever asks how big you want the 18 and you say the whole forehead, you're either extremely dedicated or way too deep in this gang. Colors matter to them too. Mara 18 members stick to blue and black. If someone walks into a store dressed in those colors from head to toe, they could be a super fan of matching outfits, or they could be very loyal to their gang. Mara 18's symbol eventually became a badge of fear because this gang got involved with drugs, crimes, and other unsavory stuff in society. So if you saw an 18 spray painted on a wall, it wasn't a friendly reminder of your favorite number, it meant stay out or else. If you think you're friendlier than the Mara 18, please subscribe. Juggalos. Imagine being a fan of a weird and crazy rap group, but ending up getting branded as a gang. That's what happened to the Juggalos, fans of the Insane Clown Posse, or ICP, a rap group that mixed horror, comedy, and face paint. And it didn't help that the Juggalos logo was a man with a hatchet looking like murder was on his mind. Called the Hatchet Man, this symbol is a little guy running with an axe, like he was late to a lumberjack convention. But it wasn't the fans who created the logo. Instead, it was designed by ICP's label company in the 1990s. The Juggalos started wearing it on their shirts and tattooed it on their skin. The logo screams wild, rebellious, and fiercely loyal, kind of like if a rock concert, a mosh pit, and an unbreakable friendship pact had a baby. For Juggalos, it's not just a symbol, but a neon sign that says, "Welcome to the family." Many say ICP's music got them through rough times. So rocking the logo is like a high five to the group and a bear hug to fellow Juggalos. Sure, it's got an axe, but it's less about chopping things up and more about sticking together. But as the fan base grew, so did the Fed's suspicion, especially when the Hatchet Man looked like a logo for a Halloween costume company. In 2011, the FBI's gang list included Juggalos, putting them next to actual dangerous groups. This made life difficult for regular Juggalos, who suddenly had to explain why their love of horror rap didn't mean they were running a crime empire. Some lost jobs, some got questioned by police, and some probably just wished they liked a band with a less confusing fan base. Eventually, some of the naughtier Juggalos decided to embrace the PR nightmare and treated the Hatchet Man symbol as a warning sign. These guys actually committed organized crime, making it hard for the nicer Juggalos to convince people they were just in it for the wicked beats and not the street heats. Outlaws MC. Outlaws MC has a symbol that tells you one thing: stay out of the way. It's a skull with two pistols crossed behind it. The skull looks like it has seen some things. Meanwhile, the Pistons say this club is all about motorcycles, because that's what this club is all about. But before that, the Outlaws used a different logo. It was a winged motorcycle tire. That looked fine if you were selling motor oil, but it did not scream tough. So in 1954, they upgraded to Charlie, the skull with pistons. The logo sits on a black background with Outlaws on top and MC below. The club also wears 1% patches, which means they are part of the 1% of bikers who do not care about traffic rules or pedestrians on the crosswalk. They even gave their symbol the name Charlie, a friendly name that doesn't fit the aesthetics, and the logo's meaning. The skull in the symbol screams danger and power. It basically tells you to stay back unless you enjoy bad decisions. The pistons behind the skull are a nod to motorcycles. Since the club is all about riding, the Pistons make it clear that bikes are not just transportation. They are the heart, soul, and possibly the entire personality of the group. Meanwhile, their colors are black and white, like a dramatic old movie or confused zebra. This combo matches their skull and piston design perfectly. The black brings the toughness, and the white makes the skull pop, in case anyone forgets this group loves skulls. And the scariest part about these guys is that their logos sometimes come with the motto, God forgives, outlaws don't, which is not the kind of thing you expect to see on a Christmas card. And if you have tough guys who talk like that, there's no wonder why the Outlaws have been linked to organized crime. Irish Mob. If crime had a history class, the Irish Mob would be on the first page, because these guys have been causing trouble in the US since the 1800s. They're one of the oldest crime groups in America, and they do it while carrying around their signature symbol, the shamrock, which isn't a cute little leaf you pin on your shirt on St. Patrick's Day. Unlike most gangs, the Irish Mob actually doesn't have a signature symbol. After all, we are not talking about a sports team here. However, the shamrock has a special place within this gang because of its meaning in Irish tradition. You've probably seen a shamrock before. It's that little three-leaf clover people associate with Ireland, leprechauns, and the hope of finding a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. But in the world of organized crime, luck had nothing to do with it. The Irish Mob, especially groups like the Westies in New York and the Winter Hill Gang in Boston, used the shamrock as a badge of identity, loyalty, and power. It was their way of marking who was in, who was out, and who should probably start running. Some members even got shamrock tattoos that weren't just for decoration or an unfortunate result of a drunken St. Patrick's Day bet. It was like a permanent membership card, except you couldn't lose it. The tattoo could also include other cheerful crime-friendly symbols like daggers, skulls, or the number 13. Meanwhile, the three leaves weren't just for style. Some believed they stood for the three core values of the gang: loyalty, respect, and strength, which sound like John Cena's core values. Whatever the case, the shamrock wasn't just a plant to them. But the shamrock wasn't just about looking tough, because it carried deep meaning, like a lucky charm with a criminal twist. It tied these criminals to their Irish roots, reminding them where they came from. Many were descendants of Irish immigrants who struggled to make a living in cities like New York, Chicago, and Boston. Crime turned out to be a lot more profitable than regular 9-to-5 jobs, so they ran gambling, smuggling, and protection rackets. When they needed a symbol for their brotherhood, the shamrock was the obvious choice. It wasn't just green like money, but was a nod to their heritage. MS-13. It might sound like the name of a super secret spy organization, but MS-13 comes with a scary reputation that doesn't have anything to do with Mission Impossible. The gang's full name is Mara Salvatrucha 13, which can be quite a tongue twister. That's why they got stuck with the name MS-13, which also happens to be their official symbol. The most common ways they use their symbol is through the letters MS or the full MS-13, often tattooed on faces, necks, or hands. It's their way of making sure everyone knows who they are, because subtlety is not their style. Some take it further by adding devil horns or skulls, just in case the message wasn't clear enough. Hand signs are another key symbol. The most well-known one forms the letters M and S with their fingers. They flash these signs to greet fellow members or send a warning to enemies, as if they created a vulgar way of doing sign language. Their symbols also cover walls in graffiti. They spray MS or MS-13 to mark territory, like a neighborhood watch sign, but with far fewer safety tips. Some smaller groups add extra symbols, like devils or crosses, to make sure everyone gets the hint that they are not people to mess with. Colors also matter to these guys. MS-13 leans toward blue and white, just like the Salvadoran flag. Some throw in black for variety. These colors show their roots, but flashing gang colors is like waving a giant "arrest me" sign. To avoid that, many members skip the dress code and blend in with regular clothes. Looking low-key is a lot safer than turning into a walking police magnet. Black Gorilla Family. Black gorillas aren't the big apes you see when you visit a zoo. Instead, it's one of the biggest prison gangs in the United States. And these guys love intricate symbols that can double as pieces in a museum for the worst artworks ever. The gang symbol looks like someone threw a history book and a fantasy novel into a blender because it has a dragon, a crossed rifle and sword, and a prison tower. But this isn't a random design that came to one of the members during a fever dream. There's a deep meaning behind the symbols. The dragon is seen climbing the prison tower because the gang began as a group that fought oppression. It's kind of like the gang's way of telling people they're ready to breathe fire and burn the system. The dragon is also black as a way of staying true to the group's history because it started as an offshoot of the Black Panther gang. Choosing the dragon was a smart move. Dragons are symbols of wisdom and destruction at the same time. That's perfect for the BGF, who want to look powerful, like they could crush anything in their way, but also wise enough to do it with style. It sends a clear message. They are not here to take orders. Instead, they're here to breathe fire and call the shots. The prison tower is just as important. The Black Gorilla Family started inside prisons, so the tower is a giant reminder of that. It is not just a building with bad food and worse roommates, but is part of their identity. The Triads. In case you missed your geometry classes, the Triads are there to remind you what a triangle looks like. That's because their symbol is literally a triangle. The 3 points on this triangle stand for heaven, earth, and man, which sounds deep until you realize it's used by people who run illegal businesses. The triangle is usually drawn with sharp, clear lines. Some versions get fancy with extra details, like Chinese characters or dragons, but at the end of the day, it is still a triangle with an attitude. Its 3 sides stand for loyalty, righteousness, and brotherhood, which are not just fancy words. The Triads take these seriously. Break any of them, and you might find yourself in a situation where triangles are the least of your problems. The symbol can trace its roots to how the Triads started. This secret society was formed in China in the 1600s when a bunch of rebels thought the Qing dynasty needed a good dose of chaos. They started calling themselves the Heaven and Earth Society, which sounds similar to what the Triads triangle symbol stands for, and during that time they caused a lot of trouble in China, giving the Qing dynasty a headache as massive as the Great Wall. The Qing dynasty eventually collapsed, but the secret societies didn't pack up and go home. They stuck around and figured out that crime had a much higher paycheck than politics. Smuggling, gambling, and all sorts of shady business became their new gig. By the 1800s, people started calling them the Triads because of that dreaded triangle. Even law enforcement keeps an eye on this symbol like it's a suspect in a lineup. It pops up in police reports, crime investigations, and intelligence briefings, always lurking in the paperwork like it's up to no good. If a business has this symbol tucked away somewhere, it might mean the Triads have a hand in it. The same goes for tattoos. A simple triangle on someone's skin isn't just bad geometry. It could mean they're part of something much bigger and more dangerous. Simon City Royals. The Simon City Royals lion crest logo doesn't really mean they're animal lovers. They're actually a notorious street gang known for drugs, violence, and gang wars. But their interesting history is why they picked up the lion as their main symbol. The gang started in the 1950s in Chicago, where there were gang fights left and right. Different groups were fighting about who had the best street corner instead of running massive criminal organizations. Eventually, a group of white guys got so scared of the colored gangs running Chicago that they started their own gang. By the 1970s, they got into drug dealing and other crimes. They eventually joined the Folk Nation Alliance, which was basically a gang version of picking a team in a giant street war. That put them against gangs like the Latin Kings, the guys who used the 5-pointed crown as their symbol, and that That's one of the reasons why Simon City Royals started using their lion symbol. Fancying themselves as members of Chicago's royalty, just like the Kings, the Royals used a different logo that still spelled royalty. That's why they picked up the double lion crest. The lion is the king of the jungle, which means that the Simon City Royals thought they were the kings of the urban jungle of Chicago, and they used two lions as their symbol because they thought two kings were always better than one. This design also emphasizes strength, loyalty, and dominance, because the Royals want to be the most dominant group in Chicago. Sometimes their logo also comes with a crown, because they probably thought lions weren't enough to symbolize their royalty, and the crest is usually black and blue, not because these are the colors of the bruises they leave on people, but because these are their signature colors. Sometimes the lions hold a crown like they just won a royal beauty pageant. That crown means the logo belongs to the big bosses, the Folk Nation Alliance. But if there's no crown on the logo, it's a localized group doing its own thing. Still, the message is the same: power and unity. Aryan Brotherhood. If there was ever a bad way of getting your gang on the most hated list, it's by using a swastika as your logo. But if your gang is called the Aryan Brotherhood, well, you not only chose a bad logo, but an equally bad name. The Aryan Brotherhood traces its roots to California's San Quentin prison. A group of white inmates thought they needed to group together to protect themselves, but instead of choosing a better name like the Tough Guys, they went all out on the racist ideology by calling themselves the Aryan Brotherhood. Naturally, they picked the swastika as their symbol because nothing says we are the worst like recycling the logo of history's most infamous villains. But the swastika wasn't always a symbol of hate. Back when Buddhism, Hinduism, and other cultures used it, it was a peaceful symbol. But Hitler, history's greatest cultural appropriator, took the symbol and used it as the logo of his Nazi hatred machine. The Nazis led a genocide that killed millions during World War II. He was obsessed with this made-up idea of an ideal white race called the Aryans. While committing unspeakable atrocities, he and his followers paraded the swastika around like it was a trendy brand logo. The Aryan Brotherhood, apparently taking notes from history's worst playbook, decided to keep the symbol alive, and they are almost just as bad as the Nazis, committing violent and racist crimes that make it clear they chose the wrong role models to idolize. The design of the symbol comes in different flavors of awful. Some members go for a plain swastika tattoo, keeping it classic in the worst way. Others spice it up with SS bolts, shamrocks, or iron crosses, as if decorating hate makes it more stylish. To remove any doubt, they sometimes put the swastika inside a circle or mix it with the letters AB for Aryan Brotherhood. That way everyone knows exactly which brand of racism they are advertising. Yakuza. Walking around Japan with a full set of tattoos all over your body might be the worst idea. You might think it's art, but to the Japanese, it's bad news. And it's all because full-body tattoos are the trademark symbols of the Yakuza, the biggest and most dangerous crime group in Japan. The Yakuza is a Japanese gang that's been around for centuries. They've been involved in everything from gambling to extortion, making them the last people you'd want to bump into on a dark alleyway. One of their most famous trademarks is the irezumi, a full-body tattoo. These tattoos are like a VIP pass to the Yakuza club, except instead of a card, you get a whole back covered in artwork. That's a membership that sticks with you. Different members have different tattoos, and each tattoo has a message. Dragons roar with wisdom and power. Tigers flex their muscles for courage and protection. Snakes slither in with life and healing. Samurai designs stand tall with honor and discipline. Cherry blossoms quietly remind everyone that life is short, much like the Yakuza lifestyle. Some tattoos tell personal stories, while others serve as badges of rank. Either way, a tattooed Japanese person is the last guy you'd want to butt heads with. But one of the most feared symbols is the Oni mask. This demon from Japanese folklore represents pure ruthlessness and complete lack of fear. If someone wears an Oni mask, they are either a warrior, a troublemaker, or someone who takes cosplay seriously. But irezumi tattoos weren't always a Yakuza thing. Back in the day, tattoos were a punishment or a way to show off your social standing. Japanese authorities branded criminals with tattoos because it's basically their way of announcing to the world that these tattooed people are good-for-nothing members of society. That's why everyone avoided anyone who looked like he should be a museum decoration. But by the 1600s, criminals started sporting tattoos. The Yakuza, ever the trendsetters in crime, picked up this idea to mark themselves as not just tough, but artfully tough. After all, if you want to be a criminal, you should do it with style. And thus, tattoos became their official gang uniform.